at each other. Wow.
We're live. Hey, this is Wendy Sweet. I almost said Wendy Fairman, my maiden name, which I haven't had in a long time.
That's because you got pulled over in my car.
I did.
I forgot to get my new tag.
I borrowed his car and I get pulled over.
I let her use my car and she got stopped.
That's right. And I was on the phone with Walter when it happened. He got to hear the whole thing. He was like, "Are you really talking to a police officer?" Well, yes, Walter, I am. So I'm Wendy Sweet. This is Bill Fairman. Jonathan Davis, you're here at Carolina Capital Management's Hour of Power. Information that's just going to drown you today. So we're so glad to have you here. One of the blessings that we get to, don't forget to like us, share us, subscribe, tell all your friends and neighbors, and
CarolinaHardMoney.com.
Yeah. Do a Twitter, Facebook thing.
Okay, and lastly, you're going to be able to ask any questions. Just put them over here in the chat. All right. And if we have plenty of time, we'll make sure that we ask our guests
the questions if they're good.
Where Jay's pointing in that direction.
Only if they're good. Yeah, they're in the direction that Jay's pointing in. Very good, Jay. So he can see. So without further ado, one of the things that we are so blessed with is we get to go to these awesome events and meet the most incredible, smartest people in the world.
Yes, you do.
They have anything to do with real estate. So we were thinking, hey, let's do a show on gurus, and these three guys were just like front and center for us, right? Absolutely. So we have today with us. I forget the order that we're supposed to do them. So the first person that we have is
there's only three. And you already forgotten the order.
Eddie Speed. Eddie Speed, the note guy, the king of notes. He is with Note School. Say, hey, Eddie.
How are you? Glad to be here.
We're so glad to have you. And then our next guest is Walter Wofford. Walter is just a Jackson, Mississippi stud, right?
Well, now that's maybe a stretch there, Wendy.
So not only is Walter an incredible teacher and investor, but he also has this great group called Financial Friends Network that we're going to talk a little bit about too. And then finally, last but not least, we have Jay Connor. Jay is a neighbor, right?
North Carolina.
That's right. He's located right down the road, about 6 hours. Not too far away.
It's only 4.
That's right. Depends on who's driving.
If it's me, it's 6. If it's her, it's 4.
Yeah. Well, what can I say? I did get pulled today. So anyway, we really wanted to take an opportunity and talk about the importance of investing in yourself, understanding how important it is to follow a mentor, a coach, somebody that's made all the mistakes. I'm probably one of those. Somebody that's made all the mistakes that can help guide you to stay out of the ditches, and give you the information you need to actually keep money in your pocket instead of losing it in real estate, right?
Because Wendy and I have never had,
a perfect deal.
No. I was going to say, we never had an original thought in our life.
That's right.
We just copy what these guys do.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So you want to start off with the first question?
Sure.
And who's that going to? Who's there?
Well, we'll start off with Eddie since he's got a nice clean desk.
Yeah.
Eddie, how'd you get started in the real estate business?
And you got about 5 minutes because this could take him 50 to tell us.
All right. Well, I'll try to. So ironically, I am from Walter's hometown.
Wow.
I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. And so then I came out here to Texas. I am a cowboy. And I came out here to Texas and went to school out here and moved back. I was 20 years old when I came back. And so I met a pretty blonde-headed girl, and she wanted to learn how to ride horses. And I said, buddy, I can fix you up.
And she's still a pretty little blonde-headed girl.
37 years of marriage later, right? So
That's a tolerant woman.
that's right. Oh, well. So anyway, I met her, and it progressed. She wanted to buy a horse. I was living. I wasn't living in Jackson. I was living in Hattiesburg, 90 miles south of Jackson, little college town. And so I was living there, and all of her family came out one Sunday afternoon, and they said, Martha wants to buy this horse, and we want to see it. And so actually, I was kind of standing back, and I had a roommate at the time that was a very skilled horse person. He was sort of giving her a lesson, and they were in a pen and, doing the walk, trot, canter thing. And so next thing I know, I meet her dad. And he says, why don't you come back for ice cream at the house Sunday afternoon in Mississippi? And next thing I know, 7 hours later, I got up from the table, and he said, if you want to learn more about notes, be at the office at 9 o'clock the next morning.
Wow.
And kind of the rest is history.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a great story.
That is awesome.
That's a great story.
Walter, what about you?
I think I was born with the real estate gene. Now, let me tell you why that is. So my mother's father, Walter Ridgway was his name. I was named after him. He passed away about the time that Kennedy was assassinated in the 60s. So I didn't know him. I was 10 or 11 when he died. I never knew what he did. But I've since found other documents from the courthouse that he did. I'm doing exactly what he's doing.
Wow.
And that is, and the same thing that Eddie's doing is buying tracts of land. That's what you're doing. And chopping them up and selling them with financing or cash. And he was doing that back in the 60s. This is not a new technique, guys. It's not at all. But when I was at college, I remember for some reason, I was out knocking on doors trying to buy houses. I didn't have anybody to tell me to do that. I just thought it'd be a good thing to do to buy a house in the neighborhood. And just to tell you how that worked out. So I had a house on a contract for 33. It was a 5-unit in Bellhaven, Eddie. And I didn't know enough how to get it closed. It was a $300 item that I couldn't navigate through. And so I didn't get it. But about 8 years later, I moved down 3 houses down and bought a house for $125,000. Okay? And that house that I passed on sold within a year or two for $159,000.
Wow.
So I got to see early on that losing opportunities cost you money.
Mm.
So that's basically how I got started. But I was actually an employee of an oil business back starting in 81, and I saw the best and the worst of the times during the 11 years I was working. And I saw in 1985 and 86 the price of oil went down to $9 a barrel. So I wanted to have diversity in my income in case my job went away, and 90% of the jobs in that industry did go away at that time. So I started buying houses with seller financing. None of them were listed. They were just for rent, for sale. And I'd go call the owner and say, I want to talk to you about me buying your house. And so I bought 17 houses over the next 3 or 4 years. And at that time, it gave me enough confidence to leave the employee world and move into real estate full time.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things I learned this weekend was that income is one of the most fragile forms of
Income.
cash flow that there is. And so we always need to have additional revenue streams.
Right.
Excuse me. So, Jay, I know that you got started off in the mobile home business, right?
Connor Mobile Homes.
That was it. More for your money. So I was actually raised in the mobile home business. My dad, Wallace Connor, became his company, Connor Corporation. It was a vertically integrated company. He manufactured them, he financed them, he insured them, the whole thing. So anyway, at the height of Connor Corporation, there were about 170 retail locations nationwide. And so my dad was the largest, or his company was the largest retailer of mobile homes, manufactured housing at the time. That was back in 1988. So anyway, that company folded, and he and I started up a new, just retail only company called Leader Homes, and we grew that to about 60 locations in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. Well, in 2003, the consumer financing for that product, mobile homes, virtually went away. About the only person that's financing mobile homes these days is Warren Buffett's company. And Oakwood Homes and Clayton Homes is still around, and that's about it. So I knew back in 1993, if I ever got out of the mobile home business, I wanted to get into single family houses. And here's why. In March 1993, good friends of ours wanted to build a house in Newbern, North Carolina, and they didn't have the seed money to get it started. And so my friend's father-in-law lived down in Florida. He was a full-time real estate investor. He says, I tell you what, I'll come up there to North Carolina. We'll find a fixer-upper. I'll buy it. You all do the sweat equity during the week and the weekends, and we'll flip it and sell it, and you keep the profit to build or the seed money to build your house. So that's what they did. And I watched my friends in less than 90 days pocket over $25,000.
Wow.
And I'm busting my butt trying to make $2,500 on a single wide mobile home. And I'm thinking to myself, I like that deal better, right? So anyway, 10 years later, 2003 comes along and the financing just went away from mobile homes. So it took us about a year to shut down that company. So that's when I went and did my first deal. And folks should not start in this business the way I did. I didn't start out with training. I didn't get me a mentor or coach. I didn't go to a seminar. I just read some books. Not the best way to get started, but nonetheless, I read that I should find the nastiest smelling bank-owned REO bank-owned house I could find. My wife and my daddy will attest to the fact I did. So this was back in the day when realtors actually published Homes magazines every month. And they put out the magazine. You flip through there. So I went through there and I found this house. It was over here on Mayberry Loop Road here in Morgan City. It had been on the market for 9 months, had over 60 showings and no offers. So, I mean, you had to like climb over stuff to walk through it. So anyway, and this was back in 2003. If you could fog a mirror, you could walk into the bank and get an unsecured line of credit, right?
That's right.
That's what I did. I went in here to BB&T and I told Mark Anderson, I said, I want a $250,000 unsecured line of credit. He said, okay. So here I go. That was before my private money days. So I bought that house for $50,000 and I put 50 in it, rehabbed it. And so what are you supposed to do when you sell a house? List it with a realtor, right? That's all I knew to do. So I listed it with a realtor and it sat for 45 days with no showings. So I read in one of my books, if I put an owner financing classified ad in the real estate section, my phone will ring off the hook, owner financing. That's what I did. And my cell phone blew up after 2 issues. And so anyway, I talked to this guy named Earl. Earl says, I want to go look at it. I said, well, it's sort of hard to find. Well, it was hard to find. If you go down this road, it's a bad part of the neighborhood, but go down that way, it's pretty. I said, meet me at the Seacoast gas station and you can follow me in. So he follows me in, he gets out, walks around on my lands. It's gorgeous. He comes back to me. He says, Jay, I'll give you an $18,000 lease option deposit right now. I didn't know what a lease option deposit was. I tell you what, you write that check and we'll figure it out. Because my daddy said, somebody offers you money, take the money and figure it out. So I took the money, and back then I was originating mortgages. Old Earl had a mid score of 587. I mortgaged him out and cashed out, and that was my first deal. And anyway, I got involved in private money later, but that's another story.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
I love it. I like the let's use this road instead.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I mean, Morehead City's got 8,000 people. It's sort of hard to find. You need to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jay, when somebody tells you if they put some money in your hand, what do? You close.
I say, thank you, and I'll figure this out.
That works every time.
That's right. Well, let me ask you guys a question, and we'll start with Eddie. It's kind of a 2-part. Who was your mentor, your coach, or trainer, someone who helped you along the way? I know Jay may not have someone like that, and then also, will you all be mine?
I can be bought.
But Eddie, you go ahead.
Well, my father-in-law, he got me started in the business, and he and another guy, they were kind of pioneers of buying seller finance notes in all of the South, believe it or not, in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So I started with them and basically served kind of an apprenticeship for a couple of years. And then, you know, the thing that I really got lucky about with my father-in-law was this, and that was my father-in-law taught me how to think long-term. He was a long-term thinker. He thought 20 years in advance all the time, and he taught me to think that way. And I still try to think that way. I still feel like I have that in him. And so he had a significant influence on me. Yeah.
Well, and Martha's really taken that to a new level for you and your family right now, right?
She has. Martha's done a really good job of building what I say is a legacy. Martha's mother is still alive. Martha's dad sadly passed away 23 years ago. He died at 59 years old.
Wow.
And so we have kept Martha's mom in the note business for the last 23 years. And now our kids, you know, Martha does, you know, strategies where they can, you know, do tax advantage accounts even for our kids and even for our grandchild, you know, and do like the Coverdale accounts and all that stuff. And we picked up a lot of this from Walter, by the way.
Yeah.
He really influenced us a lot. So it's kind of ironic that, you know, everybody on this call today I have some very unique relationships with. But Martha's taken it to a different level as far as the buying the note and, you know, selling a piece of it and stuff. She's got that pretty dialed in.
With all the IRAs. I think that's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Walter, what about you? Did you have any?
If you go back far enough, you realize that there was not a lot of education about creative finance anywhere. If you go back far enough, like in the 70s, I remember writing the National Realtor Association to see if they had any information on wraparound loans. At the time, the only thing they could produce was one 3-page article that somebody had written. So with so much information, education out there today, it's a lot easier to plug in to get some really good quality. Locally, Scott Britton helped me a lot early on, and Eddie knows Scott. And he had a vast library of tapes. He invested in himself too. And it allowed me to listen to him. And I went through, over a 6-month period, went through all of that. And then met Jack Miller. And Jack has been gone about 10 years now, maybe more. But he had a real following, but it wasn't big numbers. He just put on a seminar every 30 days on a different topic. And he wrote a monthly newsletter. And he just did it for 30 years. And so people would keep coming back, and he didn't record any of it. He had to come back to remember what he said. He talked so fast, you had to, you know, really pay attention. But one thing that he taught me, and I think it'd be true for me too, I probably made more mistakes than anybody you know in the real estate business. And he would have said the same thing. So you don't ever arrive. Real estate can be very forgiving if you stay in it. If you make a mistake and get out, that's not going to help you.
Right.
But learning the techniques and what not to do so you don't get these scars on you all the time, that's important. And I'll tell you that I'll give you 3 things that I think you ought to be focused on as a big picture. Whatever you do, make it some monthly income. Have some kind of residual aspect of it. Buying notes, creating notes, that sort of thing. Because you'll burn out if you got to keep working for a fee, having to do the transaction over and over again. Mm-hmm. Lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is learn about trust. I think they're very important. It helps you keep what you make. And certainly the ins and out, Eddie, you did a great job of this, of buying with seller financing and selling with seller financing is a good model. Stay out of the banks.
That's awesome advice. And you know, when you said learn about trust, I sat in one of your trust classes for 5 days, and I never in a million years thought that would be me sitting at the edge of my seat all day, every day going, wow, give me more. But it was unbelievable. It was so good. But we just actually were on an event call with Dan Kennedy on Saturday, which to me was just an awesome way to just be in front of Dan Kennedy. He's amazing. But he talked about how important it is to take your income, which Bill said was fragile when we first started talking, take your income and turn it into wealth. That's what we really need to be concentrating on, is taking that income and turning it into wealth. And you said trust is a great way to do that. Self-directed IRAs are a great way to do that. That's long-term hold properties are a great way to do that. Long-term notes are a great way to do that. You turn it into wealth. So,
well, I tell you, the other thing, you just got to engage the world of IRAs. You cannot afford not to engage the world of IRAs. You're going to giving up too much of your wealth building through the erosion of taxation.
right,
No.
right.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, you're 100% right on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jay, if you're open to a trainee, I'm willing to come down there.
He's just right down the road.
Come on
I'm gonna have
down.
one to drive.
Well, yeah, speaking of trainers and coaches and et cetera, so the first 6 years that I was in this business, 2003 to 2009, I relied on the local banks, which was a big mistake. I just didn't know it for the first 5.5 years. But anyway, so I relied on local banks and mortgage companies to fund my deals. I didn't know anything about creative financing. I didn't know anything about subject to. I didn't know anything about wraparounds. All I knew was, well, the banks wholesaled our mobile home inventory. So if you want to borrow money, to get it from the bank. I didn't know any better. So I remember it like it was yesterday. I picked up this phone right here, this exact telephone, and I called up my banker, and his name was Steve. The operative word in that sentence is was. So I called up Steve, and I had this conversation, same conversation I had with Steve many, many, many times. I'd done over 100 deals with him, and in those 6 years. And so I called him up, and I had 2 properties, 2 houses under contract. I was counting on Steve funding those. He'd funded the previous 100. Why ain't he going to fund these? So I told him, about the deal and, the after repaired value, where they were located, et cetera, and the funds required to fund the deal and when my closing date was. And Steve went quiet on the other end of the phone, which is never a good sign. When your spouse or significant other or your banker goes quiet. So anyway, Steve cleared his throat and he says, Jay, I'm sorry, but your line of credit's been closed. You ever heard something and when you heard it, you like rolled your eyes and say, I really didn't hear what I just heard, did I?
That's right.
So I hung up the phone and I thought to myself, what am I going to do? Well, one mantra that I play in my head for decades is it's impossible for me to fail. It's impossible for you to fail until you decide to quit. And quitting wasn't an option for me because fear of loss motivates me more than hope of gain. And I'm getting ready to lose over $100,000. I'm going to figure this out some way, right? So I called up my buddy Jeff, who lived in Greensboro at the time. He was a fellow real estate investor. I told him what had happened. He says, welcome to the club. My bank cut me off last week. I said, well, what are we going to do? He said, well, I heard of this man down in Jacksonville, Florida named Ron LeGrand that can tell us about private money. I said, what's private money? He said, I don't know, but we're going to go learn about it, right? So we go to Ron's course. This was in 2009, January 2009. And I go there to learn about private money. I didn't go there to learn about anything about buying, doing houses. My word. That's when I first heard about not only private money, subject to, wraps, seller financing, lease options, sandwiches, all that stuff. I mean, that crowd was speaking a whole different language. Mm-hmm. So by force of need, Ron LeGrand actually was my first teacher and trainer in this business because I had a big need. So, then so I haven't missed out on a deal since January 2009 for not having the money. I got real good at private money. I got 48 of them right now, private lenders funding our business. And so anyway, I got pretty good at it. And I think you're going to ask me another question about how I got into teaching. So I'll save the rest of that story.
That's awesome.
That's good.
And so we'll go backwards then.
Well, Jay has a crystal ball, apparently.
He does. He does. How did he know that?
Yeah.
So we'll start with you then, since you were on a roll. So what did make you want to teach others? What is it that drives you to do that?
Yeah, so two things. I've always been passionate about teaching because of church. So I met my wife, Carol Joy, out in Wichita Falls, Texas, my first Sunday in Texas at church. And so Eddie and Martha's got us a little bit. They got 37 years. Me and Carol Joy, we're 34 years this year. But anyway, so I met Carol Joy there. Church has always been a big part of my life. So I've been teaching. I've been a teacher in Sunday school, and I fill in the pulpit and preach, believe it or not, now and then, right? Now and then. And so I've always been passionate about explaining what it is that I do and how I do it, and et cetera. So I told you all the story in 2009 when I got cut off from the bank. Well, now fast forward 2 years to 2011, March 2011, I was bored to tears because in this business, I've been so blessed, and we are still so blessed to have such an amazing team. We got the contractors, I got my acquisitionists, I've got the virtual assistants, and I found myself in this business. I mean, I don't do that many deals, about 2 or 3 deals a month, but our average profits are $67,000 on a single family house, right?
That's all right.
That's good.
And so all I'm doing in March of 2011 in this business is I'm making decisions. How much do I want to offer? Which houses is the team going to look at, and et cetera. So I called up Ron LeGrand and I said, Ron, I'm bored. What's next? He says, well, you just need to teach what you're good at doing. And I said, well, I'm pretty good at raising private money. So I became self-proclaimed known as the private money authority, right? And so I started Eddie and Walter, my very first webinar I did to Ron's list on private money. And so I started to, of course I teach, all aspects of it now, but still my expertise and my teaching is in this world of private money. And so, number one, I love it. I love making an impact. I can make such much more of an impact on thousands of students' lives than I can just on one house at the time. So I do the business and I teach it for those reasons. It was out of fulfilling a need of boredom.
Right. That's awesome. And what's really neat is each of the three of you do the same thing. You actually do what you teach. There are so many people out there, gurus out there, that don't do what they teach anymore because that's all they do is teach. And that's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, and besides it being so profitable, it changes. I mean, what was really working 2 years ago from finding motivated sellers changes. I mean, like 2 years ago, I was killing it with Google AdWords 2 years ago, and Google AdWords ain't working right now for me. So anyway, it changes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's real estate's middle name. It should be Real Change Estate for sure. Walter, what about you? What made you want to teach others? And let me say this too. You have this Financial Friends Network that organically grew. It organically exploded into, over 3,000 people who just work together and learn together and play together. I think the key was the cruise. That sold me. But talk about a little bit about what drives you to teach.
Well, I remember Jack Miller saying that what he was looking for is looking for the bright eyes out in the audience. What I teach is on the complex side. When you talk about seller financing, trust, IRAs, all of those can be complex.
Mhm.
And so you're trying to find a person that's paying attention with the bright eyes. And he said, I think he's right, there's about 5% of the people in front of you that are ever going to take any action whatsoever. And so I think that's true,
Yeah.
on whatever topic it is. So, I like looking for those guys because it challenges me. And of course, I'm mostly in the real estate and note space. I teach for fun. I mean, that's kind of what I do. But my style is different than a lot of other people. I'll do a seminar and record it, professionally record it. And then when I do that one again, we don't cover the same material. I send everybody who's coming the 10 hours or so of the prior seminar, and then we build on what was taught previously.
Right.
And so that's a different model. I don't want to teach the same stuff over and over. I get bored just listening to myself, but as does everybody else. But what I do is I've arranged for other people who have something to contribute that they can contribute. So every time that I do an event, I may have 15 or 20 people helping me present the material. And it's a live, organic, back and forth, but it requires some outside work to pay attention about all those topics. Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did, and it's awesome too.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, I've been to several of your events that you've done, and even helped teach in some of them, which I appreciate very much. But that's what's so cool too is you hit so many different topics, and you bring in the people that are experts in those particular topics, and really. So many times when I'm sitting in a seminar with you, it's like we're all learning together, because we've got so many different people in the room that are experts and whatever that is. It's just it's a really neat setup.
You notice how she got I'm an expert in
Oh
there.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So the best part though is the the venue when you're doing it at the Love Shack on the lake. That's pretty fun. You can't argue with that. So, Eddie, how about you? What is it that drives you to teach others? Because you've just got it ingrained in you. Wherever you go, you're teaching. It's who Eddie is. So what drives you?
I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I fell into something 40 years ago that I loved, and it's changed a lot, as Jay and Walter said, but it's been the same thing. I started into the training business, so I set up the note system for HomeVestors. Right now, I was an employee of HomeVestors. I was an independent contractor, but I bought notes from Ken D'Angelo, the guy that founded HomeVestors back in probably 86 or 87. And then he came along around early 1990, 91, 92, and was forming this franchise to buy houses. And he wanted a note system. And so I worked with HomeVestors all through the 90s. And I had a lot of employees back in the 90s and a lot of independent contractors. If I counted up all the independent contractors' employees, I probably had over 200 people.
Wow.
So I shrunk my business. The market kind of changed and I shrunk my business. And I said, well, look, I don't want to do a franchise thing. That being with Ken in the 7 years that he didn't make a profit with HomeVestors to start it, I was pretty damn sure I didn't want to do that. And so I said, well, why don't I just train people to go do this? And then they can then funnel loans back to us. So my whole premise of starting the training business was not, I don't think any of the three of us are gurus. We can just tell you a whole lot of ways not to do it now. Right? And so, but the whole premise was I was just doing it so people could, in other words, people couldn't accidentally figure out how to go chase notes and go get them closed, right? That just wasn't, you couldn't accidentally do that.
Right.
You could either go through, you could go through a painstaking process like all of us did on this call, or you could actually get the right training. So that's how I started. And then one thing led to another. And, a lot of real estate investors wanting to learn seller financing is a cyclical thing. Jay was at an event that I did last year, and everybody thought it was just really cool that we could do all this kind of stuff, but they left there going, oh, we can never add it to our business. Now all of a sudden they're like, I think I could add that to my business.
Kind of getting forced to do it, aren't they?
No, it's cyclical, but the note thing is, in different aspects of it. So I got started for that reason, and I love it. And I probably my wife says I work too hard at it, but
you do work hard at it, and that's what everybody needs to understand. Is all three of you eat, live, sleep. It's all, it never stops. It never stops. And you kind of have to find a way to weave it into your life and work around it. I mean, your families are involved in it. There's no way around it. It's just a part of who you are. And it is a lot of hard work, but obviously you have to love it, right?
Wendy, can I jump in here a second?
Absolutely.
I want to tell a story about Eddie. About 10 years ago, Eddie, we went to Noteworthy in San Diego. Was it about then?
Yeah.
By the way, change that slide to .com, WalterWofford.com, not the bomb that you just showed up there. We were invited to do a full day presentation. Eddie coming from the note side and me coming from the real estate side. We didn't know what each other were going to talk about at all. Didn't even talk about it before, did we?
No, we really didn't.
And at the end of the day, we came to the same conclusion, one using real estate and one using notes. And it was the exact same conclusion. Manufacturing notes through real estate, buying discounted notes through real estate. It all ends up being for the cash flow. And I just thought that was interesting.
So there was this lawyer at the event. There's about, 50 or 60 people in that class. There was this lawyer at the event, and if you've ever done any kind of training, Jay will assure you that there's little names for people that generally ask a lot of questions and they're never going to do anything with it. We call them question makers. They're not action takers. They're just question makers. And this lawyer comes up to us at the end, and he is blowing Walter and I up with questions. Very nice guy, super nice, super sharp. And, that old lawyer did end up being an action taker, though. His name was Jeff Watson. True story. It's the first note training he'd ever sat through. True story, absolutely.
And he learned about inherited Roth IRAs during that, and he took action on that too.
That is amazing. And now he's a teacher. I mean, he puts out some pretty good stuff in teaching. And what's funny about all three of you too is that all of you base what you do off of financing. All of you are talking about the real estate is really about the financing. That's pretty amazing.
Sure.
As a note group here, I mean, we do notes.
Yeah, we're lenders. We're into financing too, y'all.
We just create notes. And as the lender or the note holder, you're always in the best position because you can control the asset without being responsible for the asset. And you're always going to be in a better position than the person that actually owns the asset, right?
If you do it right.
Yeah.
That's the way well, occasionally you're also the owner of the asset.
That's right. That's right.
That does happen. So let me get in a shameless plug real quick. If you'd like any more information about us, CarolinaHardMoney.com. Please don't forget to subscribe, share. What's the other one?
Like
and all
trust,
that stuff.
tell all your friends.
Thanks. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat. So speaking of shameless plugs, I always wanted to be the teacher's pet. So Eddie, I'm going to start with you. Do you have a favorite student that you can talk about without mentioning names?
Well, I can think of one that turned out to be a superstar. Who do you think I'm talking about?
Why don't you let him answer?
Other than Bill.
No, I think that's a good one. Ryan Parson, man, he's a stud. Ryan came to me. Most people don't really know that. Ryan came to me at he was still with State Farm, and he was in financial services. In the first class, they wouldn't let him come. He called and canceled because State Farm says, no, you can't go do that. You can't buy notes because that's competing with our business.
Wow.
And story short, he did it. And of course, now he's got a significant amount of high net worth people that he guides in the direction. And he still is in charge of our investor relations after a long time.
Wow. And I know David Phelps ran a desk for you, right? The trading desk.
He did. David Phelps, was, I met David Phelps. I knew him before, but I actually talked to David at Walter's house in Jackson, Mississippi. And then, you remember that, Walter? I came by there, and then after that, then David Phelps came to a class and really kind of latched up with me, and I had a long history with David. So yeah, pretty ironic.
I didn't even know all this when I invited them. I promise you, I didn't.
Hey, we're brothers.
That's pretty. Yeah, I've seen all your brothers, Walter.
Yeah, I got a lot of brothers.
Walter, how about you? You have a favorite?
I answered that question for Wendy earlier today when we had a conversation. I think I'm my favorite student because I'm never through digging in, trying to learn different techniques. Now, I've had a lot of people along the way that have taken them and applied them. So I'm not trying to take away from any of the students, but being a life learner, I think, is what all three of us on this panel do, though we didn't say that. And if I had to bet, Eddie, I don't know you, Jay, but I'd have to bet. I did average in school. How'd you do, Eddie?
What do you think?
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we've overcome our grades by being life learners.
Yeah.
Jay, what about you?
So I went to Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and it's one thing to get accepted; it's another thing to stay in.
Right.
So I was on the 4.5-year program. So Eddie, you're going to learn in the next 30 seconds how it is that I'm so good in music. So I was getting my degree in business management. I hated the accounting courses. I hated the finance courses. I wanted to just spend my time in the marketing department, right? Which had all but one class. Anyway, so I had to make my way. So I was drum major at a marching band for 3 years. And so I had to make my way over to the music theory department and take all the music theory classes because I was good at that, just to keep my GPA up enough that I could graduate. So I think I graduated with, I think you had to have like a 2.0 to graduate. And I think it was 1.99999 or something like that. They just let me slide on over to the 2. So no, my academics were horrible at Wake Forest. But what's interesting, you see, I didn't like to read when I was growing up. I didn't like to read in college, obviously, right? So, but I'm playing off of what Walter just said is so important. I became an avid reader. I mean, an avid reader when I was 24 years old because I finally found stuff that I like to read, right? So I've never liked to read fiction, right? So I became a personal improvement, personal development junkie. I read everything Zig Ziglar came out with, listened to all his cassette tapes. So you're right, Walter. I am like, my word, I guess I've spent $500,000 on seminars going to real estate stuff because I just love it and I love learning. And back to what you said a minute ago, Wendy, work. I mean, part of my definition of success is finding that thing you're passionate about that you can get paid a lot of money to do, and then you don't even feel like it's work. They're starting to ask me now these days, and it really hurts my feelings, but they're starting to ask me, Jay, when do you think you're going to retire? Retire? What in the world is that? I mean, what am I going to do? Right? So, and yeah, I get accused of being a workaholic, but when you don't view what you do, it's just what you do. I don't even view it as work. It's just what I do.
Hey, Eddie, did you confuse a 4-point average with blood alcohol level?
That's funny, Walter. I said this literally yesterday. I said, we're going to have a theme of this we have this special, we have these, what we call our members, our higher end education people and stuff. And Walter, you've been to many events like that with us. And I said, we got Summer Summit coming up. It's virtual, but we got Summer Summit coming up this weekend. And I said, we're going to call it, Are You Dumb Enough to Do This?
So, Jay, that was a wonderful story. Could you answer my question now?
I forgot the question.
Do you have a favorite student?
Oh, yeah. Well, you never asked me that question till
I
right
never got a chance.
No, it was good.
So yeah, so I've been blessed to have thousands of students, but one particular student that comes to mind, her name is Crystal Newhorter, and her husband Dan. And in fact, she helps me coach my students now that come along. But I mean, my land's in like a year and a half. She raised over $4 million in private money, following my teaching. They've been in my world now for 3 or 4 years, and I mean, they got equity and profits now of, my word, over $5 million. But anyway, why is Crystal and her husband Dan my favorite students? Because when they came to my coaching calls, they would get off the phone and Dan would look at Crystal and say, Crystal, we got to do this and this and this because Jay said do it. So what I mean by that is my favorite students are the people that don't try to fix what I taught them to do, right? And they don't try to make it better. Just do what I tell you to do, and it's probably going to work out for you, you know? But, you know, I've had a ton of students that I'll teach, like I got a direct mail system that gets a crazy high percentage response rate that we mail to people in foreclosures, offering to serve them and help them out of their own crisis. And so students will get my letters and then they got to fix my letters. They got to like make my letters better. And then they come back and say, you know, Jay, them letters don't work, right? So my best students trust their coach, trust their teacher, and that's good advice as long as you trust in the right person, right? There's a few I wouldn't, but you know, just my favorite students just do what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have 7 minutes left, so I'm sure we can get one more question in between the three of you.
Yeah, we'll get one more.
Jonathan?
Yeah. So you all have been doing this for a little while now, a couple years each, I think. If you could look back and say, man, I would do, you know, if I knew what I knew now, I would start out doing differently X. What is that, or would it be anything?
Now, is that in the real estate investing business, or is that in the coaching business?
You know, that could be either. Whichever one you'd like. Eddie, you want to start with you?
I flipped way too many notes. If I would have done one thing all over again, I wouldn't ever be known as a note broker or a note flipper. I would be known as a note controller. And I probably did north of 30,000, but that I would have been smarter to done less business and earn long-term income with it than just bought them and flipped them.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's good.
That is good. All right. Walter, what about you?
Number one, you dumb yourself down if you go to banks. It robs you of the creative process of figuring out how to do it without the institutional financing. The other thing would be joint ventures are the preferred way for me to do business. And you can have small amount contribution along with larger amount contribution. So you can still leverage each other within the joint venture. Somebody brings money, some brings the talent and for buying and selling. So I started out with seller financing and then moved into the institutional world and had over 100 loans, which is idiotic. Absolutely, because you give up your privacy when you do that. Paid those all off. I would have been better to begin with is joint venture with somebody that's got experience. And then you come in and do the work. And that's a great way to start. It's a great way to end.
Like it.
I like
Good
that
advice.
a lot. Yeah,
Good
I like that a
advice.
lot. Jay, what about you, sir?
Yeah. So if I had known then what I know now, wow, there's more than one to choose from. So I'll just give you one. So the biggest mistake I made, and I still made this mistake 3 years after being in the business. And the reason I made this mistake was because I didn't get coaching and training. If I'd gotten coaching and training on the starting out, I wouldn't have made this mistake. But you'd think you'd learn after, one property or two properties, but the light bulb didn't come on until the third property that I made this mistake on. And here's what I did. I bought 3 of these properties with my intention of flipping the properties, and so what Eddie just said has triggered this to come to mind. I was not looking at the long term or the long view. I was looking at the right here, right now. Well, right prior to 2008, with prices starting to come down really fast. So I bought 3 properties with the intention to flip. And here's the mistake I made. I did not run the numbers to make sure those babies would cash flow if I was stuck holding them and had to rent them out or even sell them with seller financing.
Great.
And so I took a bloodbath on those 3 properties. They were condos over on the beach. And of course, when tough times comes along, resort and luxury properties are the first ones to get hit, right?
Okay.
So anyway, the lesson learned is, even if your intention is to flip, make sure you run the numbers and make sure if you are stuck holding a property or a house or whatever, that you can have enough rental income come month or with seller financing per month to carry your underlying debt and carrying cost, or you're going to go to a seminar that you didn't plan to.
Jay,
Very
here's the
well
point.
said.
Hey, Jay, just to make my point again, joint ventures, there is no debt.
There you go.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's right.
Beautiful.
That's a good one.
Well, I tell you, the theme of this is really the financing allows you to have long-term wealth without having as much risk in your portfolio because you're in a better situation. And I like the way Walter puts it. It's okay to get your EAT money on the front end, but your real money is on the long term on the back end, right?
Well, and that goes true for relationships too. I mean, this is a relationship business, and the people that we do business with now, you may be doing in 30 years. You may be dealing with their heirs and their heirs, and so it's really, I think that's the most important thing that I want to pass on. It's your relationships that you build along the way.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I was laughing because I thought you were going to be
With
talking
your
about my
wife.
spouse.
Yeah, we thought you were going the spouse direction.
Hey, we've been married 44 years. What do I have to say? Nothing.
Guys, we really appreciate this. You guys were wonderful.
Yeah.
We get so much from talking to you guys. Every time we meet somewhere, we always end up better for it. No matter what the place is, you're always so willing
No
to
matter
give.
which bar it is.
I don't know if what they're telling me is making my eyes glaze over or the wine that I'm drinking while they're talking. Anyway, I know our audience thoroughly enjoyed it. We got a lot of great comments.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for.
And we want to
spending
talk
time
about how people can get in touch with each of you. For Eddie Speed, it's you can go to noteschool.com. For Walter Wofford, he's real easy. It's walterwofford.com. There's Eddie Speed. There's Walter. And then we'll have Jay up next. Look.
Well, actually, if Scott could edit the URL real quick, I got some free gifts for your audience, if that's all right.
That's awesome.
And they can download it.
Here.
It's at jconner.com/3-gifts, 3-gifts. And the 3 gifts, y'all, are I got my book, The New Masters of Real Estate, Getting Deals Done in the New Economy. They can download that for free, or if they want to, I'll ship it to them and autograph it. And I've got a resource on how to find existing private lenders in your own backyard. And then thirdly, I got a 60-minute audio they can download that teaches them the 5 steps on how I got over $2 million in less than 90 days. So they can download that at that URL if they want to for free.
Thank you
Awesome.
so
Thank you.
much.
That's
Yeah.
so kind.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'm glad it's in digital form, because when you were talking about the Zig Ziglar tapes, I was wondering if you still have something to play it on.
Actually, I do.
That's awesome. All right. So once again, shameless plug for us.
Yeah.
If you want any information about Carolina Capital Management, it's carolinahardmoney.com. If you're interested in investing, hit the investor tab. If you're interested in borrowing, then hit the borrower tab. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. It's been a wonderful show.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you
you
so much.